Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he degenerates through the vortex and arrive at episode 568. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How's everybody?
Fighting a sinus infection.
Sounds like it. You sound like you had a cold, but
Yeah, mostly over with, except for the cough, which is rather annoying.
I was feeling poorly on Monday, but it just was kind of a quick one and done, and I didn't even get really that sick. Just seemed like I was getting a cold, and then it sort of all went away. So maybe my flu shot worked.
Last week I had a fever in the middle of the night, and then by 8 a.m. it was gone. Came on and left just as quickly.
It's kind of weird.
Phantom illnesses.
Yeah. Did you guys do anything this week? I suppose I could start. We went to Emporia because my daughter was in Little Shop of Horrors on Saturday.
Oh, have fun.
Which was a lot of fun, and it was really good. A little 9-man show, but man, they did some quality work. It looked really, really good. Sounded really, really good. A lot of fun. But earlier in the day, we went down earlier because the kids wanted to go see Five Nights at Freddy's. So we all went and saw Five Nights at Freddy's. And I'm peripherally familiar with the games enough because the kids, sit and watch YouTube videos and talk about the lore and all the theories and things like that. So I'm not as invested as they are, but peripherally I knew enough about it. But it was actually a really good movie. I think knowing the lore or knowing the games helps a lot, because I think anybody going into this not knowing what it is think it might be a little silly or unusual, but I thought it was pretty interesting. It's kind of, it's a horror film. It's PG-13, so they go a little light on the violence, but it's also a lot of fun, and there's some legitimate jump scares, and then there's some parts of it that I was like, huh? but overall it was a good movie. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
And then today I watched the Beatles Now and Then making of documentary, which is just a little 12-minute documentary on Disney Channel. And then I thought that the song would be on there, and it wasn't. So I went out to Apple Music and downloaded the song, and it's a really good little song. I was very impressed. It doesn't sound like a Beatles song as such as they were in like the 60s, but it's more like the sounds they all took when they went on their own in the late 70s, early 80s. Which makes sense, because I think John wrote and recorded his part would have been close to his death, so he died in 80, so probably late 70s sometimes, and then of course George passed away just back in the early 2000s. But it was really fascinating how they were able to use computers to isolate all the tracks, because I don't know how much you guys know about it. It was actually one of 3 songs in 94 that, 93, that Yoko had given to the Beatles. That was the stuff that John had recorded, and they ended up doing getting back together and recording Free as a Bird and Real Love. Well, the 3rd song was Now and Then, but the track wasn't as good, and they couldn't isolate the piano, and it had like a heavy hiss, and so they decided to shelve it. But they had played a little bit on it, so that's why they have a little bit of George's guitar on there as well. And then when Peter Jackson started doing the Get Back documentary and reconstructing that, they realized that the technology they were using to separate audio would work on this tape that they had of John's. So they went back into the studio and recorded their very last song. That's what it's, in fact, it's called Now and Then, the Beatles' last song. So that's a good, catchy little song. I really like it. Like I say, it's more like their 80s stuff, their solo stuff they did later, but it's all of them together doing that later kind of stuff. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. I've been devouring every piece of information that's come down the pipe watch the documentary and then listen to the song. And I can't wait for Friday when the music video that Peter Jackson directed comes out for it. Yeah, the song itself is available on YouTube now with just a, plain now and then background. But I guess there's a whole video that comes along with it that's supposed to release on Friday. But it's just really fascinating to, hear him talk about how they were able to lift, using the computer AI to go, this is what John Lennon sounds like. Go find John Lennon in this recording. And it did. It just lifted him right out and played it. And both Paul and Ringo were like, it's like he's in the room with us. Amazingly clear. And I'm glad that this is kind of the example of how to use computer AI for the right thing.
Right.
I don't want you to go to a computer and go, write me a song that sounds like the Beatles. I don't think anybody wants that. But using it in order to isolate something that they had already recorded and then laying down previously recorded guitar licks on it and then recording new drums for it, that's okay. That to me is an acceptable use of it. And just kind of the shock and awe of here we are in the year of our Lord 2023 and there's a new Beatles song, it's just wow. But no, I like the song. I like the string arrangement they put on it too.
Yeah, that was neat. We watched Loki tonight. That was the last thing. The latest episode of Loki. How about you guys?
I'm still an episode behind on Loki, so I haven't watched tonight's episode.
Yeah, we are episode behind now as well because of Halloween.
I watched Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Had you not seen it?
I had not.
Really?
Yeah.
We're living in a hole.
What'd you think?
I feel justified in my delay.
What? Oh. You didn't like it, huh?
It was all right. It was a depressing remake. The tone of the movie was way wrong the entire time. It wasn't funny most of the time. And it just felt somber the whole time until the actual Ghostbusters kind of show up at the very end. And I felt like everything they did with Gozer wasn't original enough of a story to really warrant it.
Well,
it was just doing the same story again, set in Oklahoma.
The Gozer thing was kind of a retread, but
yeah, the tone felt so somber the whole time. It didn't
really
feel right, I thought.
I
don't know. It just didn't seem like there was, I don't want to say the love wasn't there because there was obviously a lot of attention to detail. But I don't know, maybe it just felt like nobody was having a lot of fun while making it, and so it didn't come across that way either. I don't know.
This is all very fresh take here.
Yeah.
I've not heard these complaints. I've heard complaints about the film, but not these.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It felt like they were mourning Harold the whole time. Which it's a major plot point to it, and I don't know. I just don't know how else to describe it.
We'll do a special episode of Flicks with Friends where we dissect the Ghostbusters movies.
I did show Robin Monster Squad. She didn't like
nice.
It. She didn't like it. She watched the whole thing, but then she was like, "Yeah, that's not a good movie."
Mine for this year was Transylvania 65000. I remember watching that forever, every time it was on HBO as a kid. And watching it as an adult now is like,
it's not a good movie.
It's not a good movie.
I did the same thing. I picked it up a few years back and went, oh yeah, I used to watch this on HBO all the time. And then it went, no, this is not a good movie.
They all say, who is Doctor Who?
This is Tim Trelaw.
This is David J. Howe.
I'm Peter Purvis.
I am Sadie Miller.
This is Lauren Cornelius.
Larry, it's Fraser.
For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world and beyond, the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I'm Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting for 42 years. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex on the Direction Point Podcast Network.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse. On Shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Well, I did do one other thing, and I actually stumbled across this, and this is going to be my something new 2-minute review, but it's going to be a little different than we've done, because I stumbled across a little YouTube project from Productions, which is a group, I'm assuming in the UK, because they all had very good British voices, either that or they're very good British-voiced American actors. But anyway, this released on October 28th, so it just came out over the weekend, and it's called Doctor Who Time of Death. It's a full cast audio drama, again by Productions, and I'll start my review. All right, so the premise here, and I think this thing's only about 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so long, so it's really short, and it is available on YouTube to anybody for free. These guys have done it, not asking for any cost or anything, but it stars a guy named Jack Reeves, and he's playing the 10th Doctor, and I mean a very passable 10th Doctor. He's not dead on, but he is a very passable Doctor, 10th Doctor, and I completely got into it and eventually just was picturing 10 the whole time. But it's it takes place just before the 10th Doctor's about to regenerate. So it's right after the encounter with Wilf. It's right after the little whirlwind, go back and take a look at everybody and say goodbye kind of from a distance. It takes place right at that moment. And he's transported back to World War I, where the Daleks have now the main adversaries that the humans are fighting in World War I. And he meets somebody called the Showman. And the Showman very much is reminiscent, and it might be who they were sort of implying, but it is very reminiscent of the Toy Maker, very much in the way that he acts. He meets another Time Lord, Arthmain, and it's not a deep story, but it really does have a really kind of cool climactic ending that I really enjoyed and thought was a lot of fun. But if you get a chance to look at it, again, it's by a group called Productions. They have a video, but it is just audio. They've got a artwork that sets up there the whole time that it plays. But I highly recommend it if you get a chance. It's I was going to give you the YouTube address, but they always have a weird YouTube address. Just search for Productions, Doctor Who. You'll find it. And that's my...
And you'll put the link in the show notes.
I will do that, yes. And that is my something new 2-minute review.
About how long was it?
I've got the video up here. 23 minutes. Just
Okay.
over 23 minutes. Yeah. And the production quality is amazing. These guys, I don't know. I mean, they're amateur, but they don't quite feel Big Finish professional, but they are definitely far from feeling amateurish at all. It's the production quality of this thing was great. And the acting was great in this too. A lot of times you'll hear some of these fan productions and they got their friends together, and you always have that one or two friends that aren't quite there acting wise, and it sticks out. None of these guys stuck out at all as not knowing what they were doing. So links in the show notes.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our Doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram. putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Travelling the Vortex.
All right, well, let's move on to news.
First bit of news, the back catalog of Doctor Who, for the most part, dropped on iPlayer, and they have rebranded the entire thing as the Whoniverse and revealed a new quasi-series called Tales of the TARDIS, which reunites several actors from different eras of the show and in character
yeah.
in a what's called Memory TARDIS to kind of bookend omnibus editions of episodes.
Or as the Fifth Doctor calls it, a Remember TARDIS. I don't think he was supposed to, and I just don't think they cut it out.
Yeah. So there are 6 of these, pairing the Seventh Doctor and Ace back together, Joe Grant and Clyde Langer from Sarah Jane Adventures, Maureen O'Brien and Peter Purvis, Fraser Hines and Wendy Padbury, Peter Davison and Janet Fielding, and then Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant.
I like how you did the characters for the first 2 and the actors for the last 4.
I finally scrolled up to the text of who the actors were because I didn't have to go off of memory. I was going off of pictures before that.
Yeah. I think the thing that annoys me about this, well, number one, was anybody surprised that they were going to call this the Whoniverse?
No.
And the only reason, like, everybody's like, oh my gosh, that there's a lot of people that don't like that. They think, oh, that's dumb. I wasn't surprised at all because we did get that picture that came out from Bad Wolf Studios that says Home of the Whoniverse. I mean, and it's in the font and everything. So I kind of suspected that's the road we were going, and that was probably the name they were going to land on. So that was no surprise. But I think what's annoying about this is I've had to watch these silly things on YouTube that somebody fortunately has put up, and it's just the clips at the beginning. And as Sean pointed out to me, they're edited very poorly. Actually, they're not even edited poorly. It's just they've chopped
clips.
them into clips, and so the edits are bad. But at least I'm getting to see it. But it comes down to this.
I suppose, yeah, there's to be fair, for those of us who do not have access to the iBBC or BBC iPlayer in the UK, we're very grateful that they're up on YouTube for us to watch.
Yeah.
But, oh, man, are they chopped up.
But it's just
trying to avoid that network censor.
It's just some guy's video. And so he's probably avoiding copyright that way by doing them short. Mm-hmm. But, that's the thing that's irking me about this whole 60th anniversary. And they've done this to us in the past. They've done it to us with the Blu-ray releases. I understand that this is a British show. I understand that is the home of Doctor Who and has been for 60 years. But they have a worldwide audience. And yeah, it's no longer just a British show. And when they do this exclusivity, it just makes me mad because you've got fans over in the United States. And then it came out today officially, although I'd heard rumblings about this a week or 2 ago. Then it goes back to another thing that we talked about last show or 2 shows ago that I countered Sean with, and we didn't go too deep into it, but I'll go into it now. All we're getting on Disney Plus is everything from Shooty on. Well, the special's on, and they're going to call it season 1 on Disney Plus. Now I don't know how it's happening on the Whoniverse on iPlayer, but they're calling it season 1. They're going to brand it that way, and you still have to go to HBO to see the older New Who stuff, and you still have to go to BritBox to watch classic Doctor Who. So it's all spread out for us again. We're going to have to divvy out all these different, subscriptions to all these different places. They didn't put everything under one house with Disney, which I think is ridiculous. And because I'd been hearing those rumblings, that's why when you said we were talking about, what was it we were talking about? You said, the rights to the first episode. And you said, well, Disney will open up the purse string. I don't think so. I think Disney is focused with this series on, and it's just a home for them right now. I don't think they're making very much investment yet until they get their house straight, because they're having issues with the Marvel Universe. They've had issues with Star Wars in the past. They're having issues with the park. They're losing money. They're hemorrhaging. They're fighting with their actors. So their focus is not on Doctor Who, so they aren't going to be investing much in that area right now. Now, will that change in the future? Possibly. Will they make...
All right, let me counter your argument.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Item 1, the Hooniverse logo, which we stripped right from Marvel. There's your Disney dollars at work.
That's just mimicking it.
That's exactly where it came from.
Well, you know why, though? It's because Russell T. Davis looked at it 3 years ago and went, why aren't we doing this now? Disney's been doing it right. So all he did was emulate it. It wasn't Disney. Disney might have influenced it peripherally, but they weren't the ones that said, hey, why don't you brand it this way?
Now, what makes you think that this isn't all coming from Russell T.?
Well, I think it is all.
That if Russell T. looked at that and said, hey, why aren't we doing it this way? And then suddenly there's a deal reached where, we're going to air new episodes on Disney Plus outside the UK. Well, don't you think Russell T. may have been part of the architect of that, maybe pushing for this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Russell T. I think Bad Wolf went. I think Bad Wolf went to Disney and said, "Hey, we want you to be the exclusive people. We want you to be exclusively the ones carrying this. We want to sign a contract with you and do a partnership." And yeah, Disney said absolutely. But is Disney pulling any of the strings at all? I don't think so.
Well,
Disney was looking for content. They were looking for something here and now and popular, and they're struggling in other places. So they said, we've got another avenue to make revenue and get people subscribing to Disney Plus. That's all that Disney's looking at this point. I'm not saying that won't grow in the future. If Doctor Who is a success and they see that and they see it marketable, then yeah, I think they'll start putting more money into it, and they'll start maybe even putting some influence into it, which is you're going to have a lot of people upset over that. But once Disney starts spending the money, then you're going to see Disney wanting to put the influence in. But right now, Disney is pretty hands off on it. They've got a lot of other things.
Let me rephrase that.
Go ahead.
No, Disney is not ramrodding this. Disney is not taking over Doctor Who. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that Russell T. looked at Disney and how they were running Marvel and creating a multiverse.
Oh, absolutely.
We already did that. We just dropped the ball on it. Why don't we let them run it? And so
they
went to Disney and said,
do it again.
This is what we want.
You're 100%
and
wrong.
Disney said, okay.
No, they went and said, hey, look what Disney's doing. Let's copy that. That's what they did, because that's what DC's doing. That's what Universal's doing with their MonsterVerse. I mean, all they're doing is copying Disney. Nobody's getting any input from Disney.
But Disney's been
Sean,
the only person to do it right.
You're slightly right, but instead of going to Disney, BBC said, "Okay, Bad Wolf, you take care of it."
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's happened.
And then Bad Wolf went to Disney. Here's the deal.
I bet Bad Wolf went to Disney and wanted to give Disney everything and put it under that House of Mouse. But I have a feeling the BBC pulled back and said, well, we can't quite do that yet. And that's why, because I'm sure they have licenses with Warner on HBO that have not run out. And that's why Disney doesn't have
that
it.
brings up item 2.
And BritBox.
It's not that we're being screwed that over here, you have to have 3 different subscriptions. It has to do with the fact that they still have the deal for New Who to run on Max. And until that particular license runs out, they can't do anything with it. It's just like when Paramount says, hey, Paramount Plus is going to be the home of all Star Trek, but you can find Star Trek on every cable access network and Netflix and this. It took them a year and a half before they started to pull some of those things. And it wasn't that they were pulling. They were just waiting for the licenses to run out and then not renew them. But then they turned around and did renew some of them because the money was too good. So,
I think that's the point, though, is if Disney was sinking money into it, they would then buy out those contracts.
Exactly.
I disagree, because as soon as they got Marvel, they allowed Netflix to continue to have their shows and run until that particular contract ended.
Well, no, the thing
but
is,
it ran until the contract ended.
Well,
they're not going to. Disney doesn't have money to blow like willy nilly. I mean, well, yeah, they're buying Hulu right now, but it's not.
With them anyway.
They're not blowing money for the sake of blowing money.
Sean,
they're going to wait till that licensing deal ends, because that's what makes sense.
Sean, the Netflix thing behind the scenes, the Netflix series didn't continue, not because they weren't doing well. It's because Disney knew that they were going to be streaming, and so Disney stopped putting ABC Studios or ABC TV television studio money towards it, and told Netflix if they wanted to go on, they'd have to fund it all. That's why they didn't go forward with them. So they basically withheld money, and then...
Oh, I didn't say they didn't engineer the reason for that contract.
And then Netflix canceled that contract and they didn't do any negotiating
for the same reason that when there's a new Spider-Man movie coming out, there are
Well,
no
that's-
comics or toys on the shelves because Disney's not going to help Sony market the film.
That you're right, but that's not true anymore. They are playing friendly. In fact, they do market Sony stuff for them now. But that's again
until the
because
last one, yeah.
that's because they're trying to that's because they're trying to keep friendly with Sony so they can get Spider-Man rights continuing with them. But no, the point is, though, the thing is they come up with these Tales of the TARDIS that we don't get to see because they have these withstanding contracts, and I understand
Same
that.
with that documentary that David
but that
Tennant is hosting.
documentary that there's no reason why they couldn't have done that. That's arbitrary. Yeah, maybe it has clips from it, but I don't imagine that clips are part of that contracts with those. I'm sure it's just whatever's on the channel at the time. I'm sure anything that is a clip show, BBC has 100%. They can do anything. So that could be on Disney Plus. I
think you're not looking at the complex issue. I mean, we sat through how many years of wondering whether or not Doctor Who the movie was ever going to get a physical release because nobody knew who owned it, even though it says Doctor Who and it's a BBC production. And the fact that there were 10 different studios attached to it at one point in time, and they kind of sort of now have all that cleared up.
You're
and
just
said,
making my point for
BBC
me,
can have
because
it.
what you're saying is that's not a new thing that's happened. This is something that's been happening forever. So what you're saying is I should just know better and get used to it. And what I'm saying is BBC needs to get their crap straight, and they need to start understanding that they've got a market over here and they need to do more to make these stuff available to us as well. And I'm sounding like a privileged little fanboy, but it doesn't make any sense for them to have all of this focus over there and we get the dredge of stuff. I mean, the DVD, they're not selling Blu-rays over here the way they sell over there because they don't think they'll sell here. But every time one of these Blu-rays comes out, they sell just as well over here as they do in the UK. And they don't see that. And that's what's so annoying about this. It's the whole thing with BBC America. I mean, BBC America doesn't even play BBC shows anymore. It's all American television. There's BBC America is not even BBC anymore. It's just, I get so frustrated. And I understand the reason behind these. You don't have to school me in any of this. My point is the BBC's been screwing this up for years. And they don't feel like they have a market over here. And I understand that it is government-owned television, and they have a licensing thing, but they created BBC Worldwide, which is a subsidiary affiliate of that, so that they could market that stuff overseas, and they continue to mess that up. I'm hoping that Bad Wolf, in fact, I was one of the only people for the longest time championing the fact that BBC was turning this over to an outside company, because I knew once that happened, they realize how marketable it is outside of the UK. And that's part of the reason why Russell T. Davies went to Disney Plus, because he knew who was going to be able to distribute that. Now, unfortunately, because of rights issues and contracts, we don't get everything. And I understand that, but it's absolutely ridiculous that they've been sitting on this kind of stuff for all of these years and not making any efforts to market to the United States, where they have just almost as much, if not as many, support for Doctor Who. It's ridiculous.
Okay, I will agree with the first part of your statement that the BBC has not run this correctly and will continue to not run it correctly. And thank goodness that Bad Wolf has come in to show them how to make money off of this.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it
I disagree with the second half of your statement.
Isn't it also interesting that this is happening with the 60th anniversary, when with the 50th, America got The Doctors Revisited, that whole series, and it didn't air in the UK until almost a full year later.
Yeah, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that BBC America...
It was a BBC America production.
But that's just it, though. BBC America had a lot more control over that because they were putting money into it. They did have the license. It wasn't... Max didn't get the license until... In fact, I think Amazon had it before Max had the license on Doctor Who. It wasn't until, I think, Capaldi's era that it ended up on Max, right?
I think it was Max wasn't even Capaldi. It was Whittaker.
Whittaker? Oh,
was it all Whittaker?
Oh, it went over to Max for Whittaker's era. Okay.
Yeah. Which it almost seems like the BBC realized, because I think there was pushback and anger from the UK contingents And the fact that there wasn't something like this in the UK and that Doctors Revisited wasn't available over there, and it's almost like they've
that's
done
true. We're going the
complete
reverse.
180 and done the reverse,
point.
and instead of meeting in the middle and making
That's a good
everything
point.
available to everyone, they haven't learned their lesson. They're just going, oh crap, we screwed up and didn't give this to the UK crowd, and we need to do that instead.
Well, for the sake of the 50th, isn't it possible that they felt like the Americans needed Doctor Who Revisited to kind of give them that base groundwork of this new show that you like? There's a lot more of it. And here's a couple of pieces of it that are going to wind up being important for the 50th.
Sadly,
versus the UK, which does not need that history lesson.
You're wrong.
No, they still
You're
need
wrong.
that history lesson.
You're wrong.
There's not enough hardcore
10
fans
years ago, they didn't need the history lesson, but obviously 10 years later, they do, because that's why they're doing Tales of the TARDIS, to reach that generation over there that has just enough removed that they're not, as knowledgeable as they were 10 years ago. So that's why they didn't need it over there 10 years ago. But now it's the reverse. Well, it's not the reverse, but now because it's the reverse of what happened, yeah, they're needing that over there. That's exactly what these Tales of the TARDIS are for. It's to give people I think of a ominous. In fact, it's a way to repackage them so that they're in smaller chunks too, because
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, omnibus, and they've chopped them down a little bit so that they're going to be more cohesive.
The tales of the TARDIS are nothing more than the fanboy in Russell T being able to write these little vignettes and have these happy reunion moments. But in order to get those things paid for, we have to couch them around a remembrance of this one episode so that we can repackage that episode and sell it.
It costs them less too to do that, because they only have to do the front and the back end of it, and then they can put something that already exists in the middle that they've just sort of, tweaked and edited a bit.
As opposed to a standalone, Night of the Doctor style short that just appears and releases on YouTube. That is
to everyone.
Here's a special extra. Well, here's a special extra, but this is how we're going to pay for the special extra. That way we can continue to produce special extras.
That leads us into our next piece, actually, which is, Keith, I'll let you take over, then we'll talk about how this connects.
The Daleks colorization? Yeah, so the Daleks, the episode, the story, The Daleks, is going to be released on the anniversary, not anniversary of the transmission, but the anniversary of the series, the 23rd of November, on BBC 4 in a colorized omnibus version. 75-minute blockbuster to appeal to today's modern audiences.
They're going to cut 6 20-minute episodes down to 75, which is a
great
idea. The cavern stuff's going to be just quick and done. But
I doubt they even show it.
That's probably true. That's another thing, though. That's another thing that is happening, which I'm glad. I think this is cool. This is a neat. This is a neat. Yeah, well, exactly. This is a neat little thing. But this is another thing. What they're doing is they're making it palatable to younger generations with a shorter attention span, with a need to have things not in black and white anymore, which is fine. Now I'm not going to be one of those guys that says, "Oh, you're ruining it by colorizing it," because hey, if that's not your cup of tea, it's still available in black and white. Nobody's taking away your black and white copies.
What will be interesting is to see how the story compares, other than the major acts of it, to the Peter Cushing movie.
Yeah,
like the actual Dalek story beats, to see how their edit compares to how the Cushing movie.
I think if somebody used that to maybe influence how this was edited, then I think it'll be noticeable. I don't know that it'll be that noticeable.
With as similar as the stories are in general, it's the same the framework is the same, and a lot of the Dalek aspects of it are the same. So it's just more of the Doctor parts that were modified.
That's a really good point. The structure of the story is nearly identical. It's just the trappings are different.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't think I would jump to comparing it to that, but I will say that it will benefit from a correction in its pacing for sure, because it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to nettle along because they've got to fill 6 episodes, for 6 weeks, 20 minutes apiece. And so I think that it certainly will probably pace a lot better than it does as a 6-part story. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't think it's going to be comparable.
I just think it'll be interesting to compare the two.
Yeah, I don't, and I'm just saying I don't think it'll be comparable
version.
That's a good point, Keith. I had not thought of that when they said that. I was just ecstatic because my literal first thought was stand up and cheer because the chasm is gone. We're not going to have to deal with
they left in
a whole episode of that. And if it's a 75-minute runtime, we just don't have time for it. And all of a sudden they snuck in through the back door. Okay, I'm good with this. Let's go.
The nice thing too is this will be probably included in that series 1 box set that they put on Blu-rays.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Witt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
Well, should we move on to our reviews? We're finishing up our Once and Future story arc, and this week it's Once and Future The Union, which is I guess technically it's penultimate because we get to Coda next year, but for all intents and purposes, this is the finale.
It's the finale. A coda's a coda. It's not a finale.
Well, I guess that's true, yeah. Coda's an after.
An epilogue is what a coda is.
Yeah. Degeneration. An enforced mystery tour through all of my lives.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Once and Future, The Union.
Fighting it so long, I can't hold things together anymore.
It's happened again, hasn't it?
Oh, this is a pretty pickle.
Those forays into my future disrupting my entire existence.
Intolerable. Utterly intolerable.
Miss Song, it's you! Professor, River Song.
My entire self adrift on my time stream. I've been better.
I'm unreliable.
Moving into position.
Teeth and curls. This should be fun.
Target identified.
Grandfather, what are you doing here?
Oh no, it can't be.
I will set this universe in stone.
You'll kill us all.
Basically, we're the 2 people in the universe best placed to help the Doctor.
And are you going to kill me?
I could watch you suffer all eternity long. And I will.
Big Finish. For the love of stories.
Ooh, jammy dodger. Here. Bit dusty, but you can pick off the fluff.
The Doctor responds to a distressed call from his granddaughter Susan, taking him to the Diamond Array, a huge dimensional space station. Once there, his instability increases as the 4th and 8th Doctors discover the Array's terrible purpose. Meanwhile, Riversong has made a deadly alliance to try to save her husband, and the truth about the Doctor's degeneration will finally be revealed.
Bum, bum, bum.
I meant to load up the Price is Right horn on this one, and I forgot.
Oh, really?
It's not that bad, but yeah, there are parts of this story that are a lot of fun. That's really good. I immensely enjoy the focus on not just the 8th Doctor, but a lot of the 4th Doctor back into this one as well. Although he had his own story, I was kind of surprised they put him in here as heavy as they did. I sort of felt like it was a logical leap for the Union to be the end of the line, at least for now, of the Time Lord that's been known as the 2 and the 7 and the 9. And so I thought that was a justified ending, but it was a little underwhelming to me because I think I was expecting something a little more grand. But it was a satisfying villain, especially with Big Finish, because that's been a Big Finish baddie, a Big Finish big for a while. And they did sort of hint to that possibility in that Sixth Doctor one that we listened to that had the 2?
It was the 2, yeah.
In that one. So they did telegraph that, not obvious enough, so which was nice. I thought back to it and went, okay, so there was more to that. Having him there. Now, obviously he didn't know and he wasn't the one that did it, but having him there in the middle of this story arc was a neat little writing trick to have something to call back on. And overall, I thought the performances were good, but I just don't feel like they stuck the landing on this whole thing. And maybe that's less of a critique of this particular story and more of a critique of making, which this has been Sean's complaint all along, making this their big event for the 60th. It almost makes this, the way that this one ends the story arc, almost makes all of it feel very gimmicky and unconnected now. Well, not unconnected, but not as connected as it should be for a big 60th anniversary event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that is where it falls down for me, is in the context of Once and Future in a 60th anniversary celebration. There are a lot of the stories in Once and Future that winds up being irrelevant and unnecessary. Mm-hmm. There's only a few handful that kind of become somewhat important as we listen to the whole box set. So, but that being said, I felt like for the story arc they had set up, this was a satisfying conclusion, and it made sense for the Union to kind of be the one to move it forward. It did feel like there was a little. It was nice to get the flashback of, the War Doctor just kind of stumbled in and found out what was going on. It felt like there could have been a bit more thought out plan behind the Union of, why they shot the Doctor and he took off. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of in line with that character to be a bit more reactional, I think, to this sort of thing. And they tried to give us some language throughout it about how, the degeneration gun and the degeneration energy was there experimenting on a way to try to stabilize themselves beyond what has coalesced in this Union at this space station with this configuration. But it felt like there wasn't enough there to make the connection fully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now,
but the nostalgia and the emotion of it all kind of overrides most of it for me and allows me to enjoy the story as it is.
Let me ask, because I want to make sure I landed on this correctly. So it was the War Doctor is the Doctor we're dealing with this whole time, right? Because he's the one that got hit by the gun. And that's what sent him. I still hate degenerating, because degenerating to me feels like you're going to go backwards the whole time, but then they had all these future versions. So I've always hated degeneration, but I guess unregenerate has already been used. So
sort of random regeneration.
Random, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a generation randomizer.
Sean, what'd you think?
Well, I liked it. I liked the story. I liked the fact that the Union was the big bad. Didn't see it coming. And as Glenn pointed out, it felt right for a Big Finish story. I was also very appreciative of the fact that it wasn't the Daleks or, one of the usual suspects, as it were. Because that, kind of kept it fresh in a way. And so that was a pleasant. In fact, they threw me with the casting of
Maureen
O'Brien. Thank you. Her name was right there on the tip of my tongue, with Maureen O'Brien, because she sounded so familiar. And so I went and looked up, who is this character playing the Union? Maureen O'Brien. Maureen O'Brien. Oh, yeah, she was Vicky. Okay. God, is Vicky going to be the bad guy? Like, I totally, went in a different direction than, how are they going to explain this? Like she's waiting for the Doctor to de-evolve back to the first one so she can give him what for or something. But not the case. But
and she did a great job as the Union.
She was fantastic. Fantastic voice performances. But you could kind of go across the board with that. I thought it was a little odd to have Tom and Paul back and forth. I guess it was necessary because we hadn't had Tom in one really yet, just little pieces of him here and there. So,
well, we had him in the first one.
Oh, that's right, we did, didn't we? Well, then I don't know. So I thought that was a little odd, but the thing that really impressed me was just the little touches throughout this. The diamond array, which I had said initially is, it's cool because it's the diamond anniversary. And so it's this very cool science fiction-y sounding diamond array. But then I was let down when it was like, oh yeah, it actually compresses these things down into diamonds. Like literal diamonds?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's the thing. I kept waiting for the reveal to drop about being rescued technology from Pirate Planet. Or at least a reference to Califrax. But nothing ever came. And I was like, oh, kind of feel like we dropped the ball there, guys. We have seen this before, just not on this scale. But okay. And
if there's any sort of thread of a connection to that plot in Pirate Planet, he's going to find it, isn't he?
I'm going to look. I will be on your porch pulling up the welcome mat looking for the key, I tell you. But so yeah, I kept finding these little threads that were like, ooh, where's this going to go? And then it didn't really go anywhere. But that was okay, because for the story that it told, it was an entertaining yarn. It was a well-spent hour within the Doctor Who universe. As far as a here's the end-all be-all supplement of this narrative thread that we've been weaving for, which is something we've kind of complained about from the get-go, is that they came up with a nifty reason for it to do this, I guess. And then it still doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. It was just more of a convenient way to do it. And so, we're writing the story backwards. We're starting with, this is the end result that we want. How do we get to that point? Mm-hmm. It's like, a lot of times you can't do Doctor Who that way.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't have the organic feel to it that storytelling should have.
Well, and I have to wonder how much of this came about because of COVID. Maybe they had a different plan for it. COVID kind of maybe shifted agendas. And I commend them for wanting to get as many different characters and different pairings that we haven't experienced before, which I thought they did a good job in a lot of these stories of doing that. But somehow they just felt like they could have been, it comes off as stunt casting in that case, because the stories don't have a grand enough allure to them in order to justify the fact that they put some of these pairings together. Just it almost felt like, and I don't think it was, but it almost felt like they did it because they could do it, and that's what I think I was disappointed about most.
Yeah,
I think if had it not been a big 60th anniversary thing and it was just a 4-part box set, we would probably have a completely different point of view of it.
Yeah, that's true.
But the fact that it is a big 60th anniversary celebration and they wanted to do something different from a standard multi-doctor story, and this was just kind of what they had come up with. Unfortunately, it probably doesn't work as well as it should.
Yeah.
Can I just say also how well Jacob Dudman sounded like the 11th Doctor? Holy crap.
Oh, that was another thing. When I saw the trailer for this, they spoiled that for me in the trailer. At the very end of the trailer, they have Dudman doing the 11th Doctor. But it didn't occur to me because they don't say in the trailer who's doing it. And then I thought, which I thought would have been awesome, then I thought, is this how they're going to... They've got Matt Smith signed, but they can't officially do anything with him until next year. And so they, were able to put him in this just briefly, and then we're going to get an 11th Doctor story a year from now with Matt Smith. And then when I went to the credits and realized, it's not been doing the voice. Yeah, but he does a great. 11th Doctor. The 12th Doctor.
He does a better 11 than he does 12.
Yeah, not quite as.
Not quite there on the 12th. I think the other thing that is a little disappointing, and maybe it's because we just came off of Jodie, and this would have been probably recorded and wrapped before she even maybe bowed out or announced that she was bowing out. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get a 13th Doctor reference in some way. We got all the way up to 12, but we didn't get some sort of 13th Doctor. Maybe they were... I want to believe that it's because she hadn't bowed out yet when they wrapped all this up recording-wise. And that's
they
why.
Did finish recording it almost 2 years ago.
Yeah. And so... but part of me wonders if maybe because they just wanted to distance themselves from 13 for a while, as everybody feels like they're doing, before they...
Well, and it makes me wonder if there is some sort of licensing thing, because they haven't done literally at all with 13, period.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I know once upon a time we had talked about how, the BBC holds such a tight license on the current Doctor that you can't do as much with it without their blessing.
Right.
It makes me wonder if they were just not even going to try to dip into that well yet until she had actually fully moved on.
Yeah.
And while she has, by the time this aired, when they were writing it and recording it, it hadn't happened yet.
Well, and if you think about it, we haven't even, we know that she's got audios coming, but we haven't even got Renegade Doctor yet. So...
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, it seems to be well beyond. Once they've moved on to a new era, then it's free range for Big Finish.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad, like legitimately bad, because I feel like we, as fans, get to the point where an anniversary comes up and we all start going multi-Doctor story, multi-Doctor story, multi-Doctor story, multi-Doctor story. And, we understand that's not sustainable. It can't be. Multi-Doctor story, we've gone back and looked at them all. And multi-Doctor stories have a very kind of special vibe to them. And some of them work and some of them don't. But it takes the right connections to make them work. And I would almost rather have not as many and get really good ones than to have them for, every 5 years or every anniversary or whatnot. So then here comes Big Finish and says, okay, we're giving you what you want. Here's a multi-Doctor adventure. We found a way to do it. And all I've done is complain about how they did it.
Yeah. Well, and I think we have to say some fans, because I think if you're just a fan of the television stuff, you're not oversaturated with multi-doctor stuff, and you're probably chomping at the bit for more. If you are, just a books and TV thing, you don't even have that much of an instance of multi-doctor stories in the books or the TV. But then I think, as you're saying, you put Big Finish into it, and Big Finish gives us what we want, and they give it to us at least once a year. It feels like it's being overdone to us, and then we do complain about it. So I think it's even more so those of us fans that are indulging in the Big Finish are probably the ones that are like, okay, maybe we've done enough multi-doctor stuff at this point.
And I can't fully blame Big Finish. I mean, big multi-doctor stories would be fun to write and fun to record.
And if you've got all the actors willing to do it.
Exactly. We can do it, so why aren't we doing it? So I can't fully blame them either.
I came up with a few, prefixes that we could fix the degenerate. I like hypergenerate. I think that's a good one. I like transgenerate. I think that's a good one. I even don't mind intergenerate, because it's like between or amidst or among. So among all of your different regenerations, past and future. So I think if they'd gone to my list, they could have come up with something better than degenerate. Probably when they started this, they said, okay, we're going to start with the War Doctor, and he's going to degenerate to the First Doctor. And then they started building the story and said, well, wait a minute. David Tennant wants to do one of these? Okay, well, let's see if we can fit that in. Oh, wait, Chris is going to do one? Well, let's see if we can fit that in. And why don't we throw the Unbound Doctor in there? I think that's probably what happened, is this started, just going from one thing and ended up being another thing. And so things get left behind like degenerate.
Yeah.
Possibly. I thought there were a couple of nuggets of awesome in the overall run.
Which we haven't really talked about, being Susan, which I thought was fantastic throughout the whole thing, and her and River together was great.
Yeah. I just kept waiting for her to at least one time call River grandmother or grandma. Just waiting. It just didn't happen.
They acknowledge the family aspect of it at some point.
Yeah, Susan was a lot of fun in this. I can't believe I completely overlooked that when we were discussing that earlier. And River was a lot of fun too. River,
and plus
the River playing both sides, I thought was really cool, because it was very much in her MO and her method, and not only her method, but her tactics. I mean, that's something that she would do, and always for the benefit of the Doctor, but very good at infiltrating the other side too. So that was cool.
Work backward from the result you want. Which is true. I mean, that's what you got to do when your problems.
Yeah, that's right.
And the pulling of the heartstrings when all of the future incarnations, kind of get to say hello to Susan was fantastic.
Yeah.
And that moment where, they have Stephen Noonan do the First Doctor, Susan, was also really nice.
Yep.
There's a lot of good fan service in this one.
All right, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up next on the schedule, we are going to take a aside for some fun and games. Little R&R, little rest and relaxation. No, not really. We're going to take a look at Cubicle 7's Doctors and Daleks. It would help if I could say the word of this thing correctly. Doctors and Daleks. I don't know why I want to put the Daleks first, but I always do that.
It's because they're so cool.
Doctors and Daleks RPG from Cubicle 7. And we are actually going to, play. So you talk about fun and games. We're going to play. And you'll get to see how good our storytelling skills are. and more importantly, how good or bad Glenn and Keith's rolling skills are. And then we have some more 60th anniversary tie-ins with the ongoing 14th Doctor comic strip, we believe, coming to a close, Liberation of Daleks, along with the Titan graphic novel, Once Upon a Time Lord. And then we'll do some more anniversary specials tying in for the 60th with the documentary Doctor Forever, episode 4 specifically. And then Lost in the Dark Dimension, which was a fan production of a script that supposedly Dark Dimension was going to be the 30th. Am I right on that?
40th, I believe.
40th.
Yeah.
One of the anniversaries. Somebody had written this big, massive multi-doctor.
No, you're right. It would have been the 30th. Yeah, no, you're right. Because
I think it's 30th.
Was it the 30th that they ended up doing Dimensions in Time? Yeah, because
yes.
Pertwee was still alive. So.
And so we'll take a look at the what we got and what could have been versions of that.
Yeah, just to put Doctor Forever in more perspective, that's the documentary on that particular story. So we'll be reviewing the documentary, and then we'll be reviewing the fan production from season 26B Productions. That
I see. Said the blind man. Yeah. Okay. And one of the things that referenced in the Tales from the TARDIS is when the companions all looked at their respective doctors and says, "Well, you got old." And they had that wonderful line about, well, that's the funny thing with the time streams. So sometimes I regenerate and sometimes I get old. And it's just like, oh, what a way to hand wave that away and just be like, yeah, we're not going to worry about it anymore.
I'll leave you with this. This is something that we'll probably be talking about in about a month from now. And remind me to rejoin this idea on what was said there, because I think that if rumors are correct and something actually does happen, it will actually retroactively go, aha, no wonder you said this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so just remind me when we get done with the specials, remind me to revisit that statement.
Look at Glenn dropping the big nuggets of what if. Okay, you keep your secrets. And then, of course, after that, we have, what's this on the schedule? Actual living, breathing Doctor Who episodes. Oh, my hearts. I don't know if I can take it.
Yeah, it's been a little more than a year since Power of the Doctor aired, which was the last
Star
time.
Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, and The Giggle coming soon.
And, of course, you can continue to find us on our website, travelingthevortex.com. If you get any value on this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by becoming a patron and click on our Patreon link and support us there. You can unlock audios and specials from us. We're going to have another trivia quiz coming up. I've got one in the works right now that's going to be uploaded here pretty soon. And then if you can even just give $1 a month, that helps keep us on the lights on here, and you get all that special audio. We don't lock you out for... We don't have tier levels yet where you have to hit $5 or $10. Everything is good to go, just even for $1. We would love for you to contribute more if you could, but even just $1 helps us out. It's just $1 a month. I mean, that's less than what? A song for iTunes a month. Well, not anymore, because that's like $1.29 now, but it's not a lot of money. I mean, I know these days things cost more, but $1 is just a drop in the pan once a month. Please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to the podcast. Helps us bump up in the ratings and the recommendations, and then you can join in the conversations on our listeners forum on Facebook. Of course, you can also find us on TikTok, Twitter, or what was formerly known as Twitter and now is called X. I will never get used to that. And Instagram. Anything else we need to talk about before we close this program? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.